Welcome to our new podcast, Beyond the Field, brought to you by the Oregon Stater Magazine, the flagship publication of Oregon State University's Alumni Association, and Oregon Community Credit Union, OCCU. Show your Beaver pride by getting OCCU's Beaver Visa, no annual fee, a 0% introductory offer, and bonus points on Beaver purchases. For more than a century, the Oregon Stater has been bringing you stories about the accomplishments of Beavers in your community and across the globe, strengthening lifelong connections between alumni and Oregon State. In this podcast, you're going to get a unique chance to hear from former OSU athletes, learning about their lives competing as Beavers, how that experience shaped their future, and what they're up to today. Certainly, there are some great stories to be told. I'm your host, David Endres, a proud OSU alum and Beaver sports fan. In fact, I started my broadcasting career on the Oregon State campus radio station, KBVR-FM. Well, whether it was quarterbacking the legendary 1967 Oregon State football giant killers to memorable upsets, playing defensive back for 9 years in the NFL, or moving into the broadcast booth, Steve Preece has been a part of the American football landscape for decades. And despite the transitory nature of athletics, especially at the pro level, Preece has maintained his Northwest roots and has never wavered in his support of the Beavers. Preece was recruited to OSU after graduating in 1965 from Bora High School in Boise, Idaho, the speedy quarterback being a great fit for head coach Dee Andros' option offense. Many recall the T formation or full house backfield. In taking the reins full-time in 1967, Preece led the Beavers on a run that is considered one of the greatest seasons in Oregon State football history. It included a road win at second-ranked Purdue, a tie with UCLA in Los Angeles, Bruins ranked second at the time, and then the shocking 3-0 upset in Corvallis over top-ranked USC and All-American running back O.J. Simpson. The Giant Killers cementing their names into the pillars of sports history. The team finished with a record of 7-2-1, ranked 7th in the nation, and just missed out on the Rose Bowl. The next year, Preece led the Beavers to a 7-3 record, finishing 13th in the country. In both 67 and 68, Preece was the team's most valuable player and selected second team All-Pac-8. Following graduation, it was on to the National Football League, where Preece signed a free agent contract with the New Orleans Saints, where he played defensive back and special teams. That free agent signing led to 9 seasons and 5 different teams in the NFL, his longest tenure with the Los Angeles Rams. He retired in 1977 with the Seattle Seahawks. Preece was inducted into the State of Oregon Sports Hall of Fame in 1988, and the Oregon State University Hall of Fame in 1991. Preece parlayed his knowledge of football and business into a successful sports broadcasting and real estate career. Steve's still part of the Beavers Sports Radio Network. Steve, always great to see you.
God, that's hard to believe that's all happened.
Yeah, I know.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, well, it's great, and I'm always pleased to see you. You and I had a chance to work with one another back in the day during the Jerry Pettibone era of Oregon State football, Prime Sports Northwest. I was on the field and you were in the booth. I believe it was Jimmy Jones to start with.
Yes, it was.
And then Scott Lynn following that.
And they were so much fun. I mean, it's all changed as you go along, but they both got me off started the right way. And Jimmy was so much fun.
Yeah.
And we'd film things right down here at Channel 12 a lot of the time when we were doing specials like this and so forth. And just some really good people. You always, as you know, you'd go out to dinner before the games the night before, and you'd spend so much time together and talking about Oregon State and doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was great. And I was just thinking about this too, between high school football, college football, your career in the NFL, sports broadcasting, any idea how many games of college football or pro football in general that you've seen over the years?
Oh my God. It's hard to, I like to watch it.
Yeah.
So I watch, it drives Karen crazy because I will sit down on a Sunday and watch 2 or 3 games if she isn't around or something like that. And I've always just enjoyed football.
Yeah.
I also enjoy some other sports too, and we still stay active and do a lot of things. I enjoy occasionally we'll even go to a high school game. We hear about a good one, hear about some good kid, in where we live in Vancouver. Jason Gessler, that used to play at Washington State, that we did some games with.
Exactly.
Washington State games.
Cougar,
he's been a coach over there. And so I've stopped by at a couple of those games. And, you just get involved in it. And I love sports, love football, love competition.
Yeah. So in high school, Bora High School, Boise, Idaho, you obviously started playing football, but you also track and field, correct?
I actually ran track and field and was an all-state basketball player. And one of the reasons I chose Oregon State when I did was they were one of the schools that said you can play basketball and football. I ran track at Oregon State too as a freshman. And, it's kind of funny, David, because I'd never even heard of Oregon State. And then about my sophomore or freshman year in high school, all of a sudden I'm watching the Liberty Bowl. Right. And there's Terry Baker, and he goes 99 yards, and you're going, wow. And I wasn't a quarterback at that age. I was a kind of big I had a little extra weight on.
Yeah.
My nickname when I was a junior was Fat Junior. That's what everybody called me. And so I wasn't interested in the quarterback thing, but all of a sudden I was thinking, who's Oregon State? Yeah. And I remember a few months later, he was a starter in the NCAA finals in basketball.
Right.
And all of a sudden, as I got older, I remembered Oregon State and kept watching it. And, then my senior year of high school, I'd been a quarterback 3 years then. And it was so interesting and exciting because that Oregon State team was the last Rose Bowl team. That 65 Rose Bowl was my 65 high school team. And I was in that recruiting class. So, that's how I got interested in it, was through my high school stuff and people doing track and Baker's 2 or 3 different sports he was involved in.
That's right. You were a sprinter.
Yeah, I was a sprinter.
Right. Yeah. Well, that suited you well as quarterback.
Well,
right?
It was kind of funny because I'd already been to Oregon State, and we can talk about that with Pro Throw. He recruited me my senior year right after the Rose Bowl, and we had a number of us in, and I was really excited about that. But I got to when I finally came over the second time, when Dee had gotten the job and Tommy had gone on to UCLA, I had run in a track meet. They had to pick me up after the track meet, get me on the plane. Actually, my mom picked me up, took me to the airplane, got me in the air and over.
Right. And
I had run 9.7 that day. And it was the fastest I'd run.
Wow.
And, it was by far the best in Idaho that year. And so I came in and Coach Connect, who'd been at Boise High School, our crosstown rival. He was the recruiting guy for me. And he said, how'd you do in the track meet today? And I said 9.7. And I think my stock changed after that.
it went way up.
I know it. But it was, I loved all sports. And in those days, they used to say, which I encourage now, is, hey, you never really know. I thought I was going to be a great basketball player.
Right.
And I was okay. But, I get to college and all of a sudden you're a great football player or better football player. So you never know. And you want to keep playing them and see what happens.
Did you ever think about playing basketball at Oregon State?
I did. My rookie year, I started out in basketball and started 3 games. Bill Harper was the coach.
Yeah.
I was starting and I couldn't stand that slow down thing. I'd been on a couple of state championship teams that had good players. Gary Freeman, that later was a first-round draft pick, was a year behind me on my team at Bora. And we just, I couldn't take the slowdown. And pretty soon, about 3/4 of the way through the season, I took off on a fast break and got benched because of it. And I waited about 3 days and went into Coach Andros and said, I would like to become a full-time football player.
There you go. And the rest is history after that. So,
oh, funny.
Paul Brothers, the quarterback ahead of you.
Yes.
Right.
When I was looking at schools and you think of the Terry Baker legacy. And then when I went there under Pro Throw and I was recruited by Joe Francis, who was an ex-quarterback, running back, and a single wing guy. I would follow Paul and those kind of guys and just found out what they were like. And when I was recruited there, Coach Pro Throw said to me, you've got to look at who the people are that'll in those days teach you. It wasn't, we had no portal or anything like that. So you were there. You were there for 4 to 5 years, and you were really concerned with that. And he sold me at the time on the fact that I would be playing behind Paul. We didn't play as freshmen, but sophomore year would be Paul's senior year, and I would get to play behind him and learn from him, and I did. And then we had another quarterback who'd been the year before me, Skip Vanderbutt, who became a fullback and then a linebacker. I spent 10, 11 years in the league. But it was just a great way, and everybody knew each other, and everybody was kind of from the Northwest, so it was easy.
Yeah. And then playing for Coach Andros, I read a recruiting story where another school kind of came in on you, and Coach Andros told probably Coach Connect, don't come back unless Steve Preece is coming here. Is that correct?
Yeah. No, that is correct. But it was, in those days you couldn't transfer unless you couldn't get a scholarship the next year. And quite frankly, I had a girlfriend in high school, and she was going to another school, and BYU came in, and my family was very staunch Mormon, and at the time I was. Yeah. And so they kind of everybody played that card on me, and pretty soon I was thinking I was going to go there. And I called Coach after my freshman year. I also was a little mad because I thought I had a great spring game my freshman year. Right. And I thought I should be starting. And of course, everybody goes in and meets with the coaches before the class is over. Yeah. And they said, well, you're starting the way all freshmen start. You're a sophomore next year, but still you're number 3 or something. Sure. And I thought, I've already beaten all these guys out, and I should be even with Paul. And they said no. And so I was, spoiled little kid and kicked a little bit and ended up saying I was going to transfer. And that's when Coach Andros told Coach Connect to go over and not come back without me. And Coach Connect did it very simply. I'll tell you, he said, just so you know, we know your family can't afford to be paying for a scholarship at BYU. Yeah. So however you're going there, it ain't legal. And he said, you better think about it again before you commit to this. And I went back to the Beavs, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Our whole life has been because of going to Oregon State and hanging out there, my 4 years there, and the relationships I have from people in the state of Oregon. Yeah.
Well, and Coach Andros, the pumpkin, the great pumpkin, such a legend. What was it like to play for Dee?
Well, first of all, he had so many colloquialisms and funny things he'd say that he kept everybody smiling and happy. And he worked this. He preached team football. He preached everything as team. He would talk in that Southern voice and tell you about Oklahoma and tell you about the Marines. Yep. His Marine ways were so cool. And he really made us feel like we were brothers all the way along. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody, like I said earlier, everybody was from Oregon, Idaho. We had the top 3 players in Idaho. We had the top 3 or 4 in Oregon. We had that year, because it was the recruiting year with the Rose Bowl, we just got who we wanted. I think my class ended up having 7 guys drafted out of it. Wow. And I was a free agent. And Stolick was a free agent. So, it was really some talented people that he recruited. But he always did it as a team. Yeah. And there was, when my parents, I was the first in my family to go to college, and certainly the first to be able to go and not worry about how long you could afford to pay for it. We were farmers. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things. My parents loved Dee, and they didn't like Coach Prothro. I remember Coach Prothro, when he and Joe Francis came in town to recruit me before he left, we went down to the Hawaii Hotel and had dinner, and he had a drink. Mm-hmm. And my mother, when we walked out the door, my mother says, I don't think you should go to Oregon State. And then I came to Oregon State and visited under him and enjoyed myself. But, I had a kind of a different visit when I was here. Funny story that you may not want to hear, but it's one of the crack up things is I was there and I loved Oregon State. I was going to go. They were the Rose Bowl. We all wanted to go. And I finished the last day there, and everybody goes in for 5 minutes with Coach Prothro.
Right.
And Coach Prothro told me, he was pretty standoffish versus Coach Andros. Mm-hmm. And he starts telling him how much they want me. But they had the other guy they were recruiting at quarterback there the same weekend. And Coach Prothro said, you're going to come in after Paul Brothers. You're going to do all these things, what I told you earlier. Mm-hmm. Only he called me the other guy's name.
Oh.
The whole time. And I went back and my folks said, what'd you think? And I'd already told them on the phone, long distance, I loved it. Yeah. And they immediately said, I don't want to go there anymore. And then Coach Andros got the job a few months later and changed everything.
Things totally in that regard. Yeah, and when I hear or talk to other of your teammates, the 67 Giant Killers, and you hear some of them and other players who played for Coach Andros, they always talk about the man in the mirror.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And that what was that?
It was a poem.
Okay.
When you get what you want and you're trouble for self, and the world makes you king for a day, just walk to the mirror, take a look at yourself, and see what that guy has to say. He may be your father or brother or wife. Upon judgment, he may pass. And the fellow whose verdict counts most in your life is the man who you meet in the glass. And there are two more stanzas, I think, but he came up with that all the time. And he had so many of these little sayings like that. Mm-hmm. He probably read that to us or recited it to us about every fifth game, a couple of times a year just before the game. And he'd do it a couple of times in camp. And it was just so important. He had a bunch of expressions. Another one that used to crack me up was he would look at you and say, do you realize that when you throw a pass, only 3 things happen and 2 of them are bad? Why would we ever want to throw a pass? Right.
Yeah.
You just kind of laugh.
Thus running the football. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. And you think about that, and I mentioned it in the open about the 67 Giant Killers and the T formation or the full house backfield. And I'm going through my mind and thinking about the players. And obviously you at quarterback, you had Bill Earthquake Enyart at fullback, Billy Main, one of the tailbacks. Who else was in the team?
Donnie Summers was the other back, and he transferred in. Our class came in with a guy named Jerry Belcher. Mm-hmm. And Belch he was the only one of us to start as a sophomore. He was the other back opposite Pete Pfeiffer, Paul Brothers, and Bob Graham. Yeah. So he was great. And the next year they brought in Donnie Summers, and Bryce Huddleston came in that year. Sure. And so they moved Belcher over to defensive end, and he started there the next 2 years. So there were so many good athletes, in those days. One of the best 2 athletes on our team, Jesse Lewis was one of them, who was, the Olympic gold medalist and our silver medalist and all that. The other was John Sandstrom. Mm-hmm. And these guys were they were both fullbacks. I swear, not half. We had 10 fullbacks on our team that were playing defensive line, linebacker, even safety. Right. Dee just recruited athletes. He had so many, when I went to professional football camp, it was a 10-day camp. I played 2 days at quarterback, 2 days at running back, 2 days at wide receiver, 2 at safety, and 2 at corner, and made it as a corner. Right. And they recruited athletes. Yeah. That's what you did. You were looking for a different kind of kid, and most, all besides athletics or athletes, was that they were looking for guys that just wanted to be at Oregon State and wanted to be a part of the team. Right. John Didion? He was my center. Yeah. When Did and I came in together, the first day we sat on those bleachers to watch the varsity, and we all came in first day of school, if you will, that freshmen could be out on the field. They wouldn't even let us out there until a certain day. And Did and I were exactly the same, 6'1.5", and we both weighed 190.
Wow.
And I remember meeting him and having him introduced by Coach Bogosian, and as this guy's going to be your center. We love him. He's from Woodland, California, and all that. And I'm looking at him going, this guy's 25 pounds lighter than my high school center. What am I getting into? And of course, you know, he was a consensus All-American, and he spent, I think, his last 5 years, he was Archie Manning's center at New Orleans, and but great athlete again. He was drafted by Vince Lombardi at Washington as a linebacker, and that's the kind of people, you know, we
athletes.
We had a couple of guys later on in our Giant Killer years. Harry Gunner, defensive end, played, I think, 12 years in the NFL, and Scott Eaton, defensive back. Both of them were basketball players for Coach Gill. They weren't even football players. Right. They played 1 year at Oregon State and played all those years in the NFL. So it was a different, you know, you were recruiting different kids where everything is specialized now. Everything. Yeah. Then it was, you know, you're picking up the best kids and they play. And boy, they did. I mean, you look at the Sandstroms and people like that, they could all play basketball. They could have, most of them could wrestle. Just fun stuff. Everybody was together and worked together and helped each other, and even in classes and stuff, and just a different situation.
I remember former OSU coach Mike Riley talking about that too, how he loved to get guys who played all sorts of sports. Yes. He liked that balance of being able to do that.
Oh, for sure. And, you know, remember, his dad was the defensive coordinator on our team.
Yep.
So he was the coordinator. Rich Brooks was the defensive line coach. Wow. And Mike was a junior high school kid when I was there and was always at practice. And they really believed that you pick the best athletes and hope you found a position for them to get the best players on the field. Coach Andros used to always say, we want the best 22 guys playing. Yeah. And thought about it to the extent of even thinking about playing people in two ways sometimes.
So the T formation, which you'll love this story, I was watching a college football game earlier this year, and it was a goal line stand. I can't remember who the teams were, but a team came out in the T formation. Oh. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, there's going to be some Oregon Staters out there who are seeing this game and are going to love seeing that with the T formation like that, because you just don't see it anymore. Why not?
Well, it's just not as exciting as some of the others. Yeah. You know, what you like to see is throwing the ball around and doing those kind of things. Some people feel differently. I mean, I just look at the Super Bowl we just saw and saw two really good defenses. One of them was a great defense. Right. And so you appreciate different things, but I think it's more exciting now. It's all a fan game. You know, you know that from watching the Super Bowl and where it was played, and you know who the halftime are and everything. You're trying to increase the people watching, increase the monetary end of it, and it's gotten deeper into the game itself and into college football now. Sure, it's a business. It's big time.
Right. So with the T formation, Bill Earthquake Enyer, let's talk about the 67 Giant Killers, because it was such an iconic year for Oregon State football. How many plays in general in that 67 year would you have run during the course of a game? How fast were the games? Because you're running the ball a lot.
Yeah, the games were fast. We probably have 50 to 60 plays is all. David, my junior and senior year, we called most of them what we called, I'd go in the huddle and we'd call check with me. Yeah. You go up the line of scrimmage and you just call the play. Yeah. We had situations where you called a play and then I'd rub my butt and Enyard would know I was going to keep the ball instead of giving it to him. Mm-hmm. We had series where we had a belly series where I spun and gave the ball to Enyard, or else I spun and then spun back and handed it to Maine or Summers or Belcher or Grimm on the comeback. Mm-hmm. We had all our passes, off the same thing. There was a bootleg off that. There was a rollout off that. Then you had another series, which was you just opened up and Enyard went straight into the line ahead. And off that, you had a bootleg. You had an option. Everything had an option out of it. So that's, I had a whole lot more options than I did passes in those days. And it was the the way football was then. You watch the great Oklahoma teams and the Nebraska teams. And, Coach Protha was considered a crazy man because he, split people out occasionally. Mm-hmm. We only had one wide receiver, if one. And a lot of times that wide receiver would come in motion and then just blast somebody at the line of scrimmage. They were as good a blockers as they were pass receivers.
Right. If you ran 50 plays in a game, how many passes?
I don't think I averaged more than like 10 a game.
Yeah.
And that's too many. Probably 7 or 8.
That's something.
Wow. If you got way behind or something, we didn't ever. But if teams that got behind, they'd throw more. But then they'd only throw like 2 out of 4. Mm-hmm. So it never got to be a big deal.
What do you remember most about that Giant Killers year, 67?
That we lost to the 2 worst teams on our schedule.
Wow.
Yeah. We won we were coming off, all those guys, Pete Pfeiffer, Bob Grimm, Rocky Frey, all those guys, they all left. Mm-hmm. And so we were a new young team. We went out and we won a couple or 3 games and we were 3-0. And then we lost to Washington up there. Mm-hmm. We were ahead 7-6 with about a minute to go. And worst play of my college career, I told you a little earlier, I rubbed my butt, meaning I was going to keep the ball. Mm-hmm. And then they changed the defense. So I, did something else, which was stomp my feet and yelled Buff, which was Buffalo was also his name. Yeah. And that was supposed to mean that I'd changed it back. And so all we had to do was run out the clock. Yep. We had the ball. And I was supposed to give it to him. As I said, I'd already signaled that I was going to keep it. They changed it, and I signaled I was going to give it back. He didn't see that one. So it was my fault as the quarterback for doing it when I did. But I put the ball out there, and he didn't take it. And they picked it up, got a fumble out of it. It was rainy, and that was the least points we scored all year, but we had the game won. There were only 4 plays left, I think.
Wow.
And then our defense goes out there and they score on a 60-yard 3rd and 10 draw to a fullback named Carl Wojciechowski, who happened to be from Beaverton, Oregon. Okay. And he was playing for the Dogs. Yeah. And they beat us 13-7. Oh. And then we came back to Corvallis and lost to all teams, BYU. Yeah. And they had Virgil Carter as the quarterback, so they had a pretty good team. But, it was the only game my parents saw me play in college. And so it was, my mother just said after the game, she said, you've only got 2 Mormons on the team and 2 Mormons can't beat 50.
There you go. Thanks, Mom.
I know it.
Well, but then obviously the team goes on to the big upsets, as I mentioned, UCLA, Purdue, and again, the big one, USC in Corvallis, 3-0. What do you remember about that game?
Well, first of all, let me say the first one. Purdue was after that. So we were 3-2, and everybody's thinking, okay, these guys were puffed up. So we went back there, and it was Leroy Keys, Mike Phipps, Jim Burney, the receiver. They had some players now. And we went back there, and we beat them up. And it was funny because Sam Bogosian is the coordinator, and Johnny Easterbrook the first year, and Dee always said, you break any rule to win. Any rule, you break it to win if it makes sense. And so Roger Cantlin, a wide receiver, who was from Caldwell, and we'd been against each other in track and basketball and everything. He came back to the huddle and he says, I can hardly block these guys. They aren't even paying any attention to me. Will you throw me the ball? So we went back to the huddle and I said, okay, the next time we had a situation where it was seemingly a run for sure, I said, I want you to all block this like a 57, okay? Only I'm going to fake that to Buff, and I'm going to drop back and throw it to Cantlin. And we made up a play, and he scored on about a 35-yard touchdown pass. Wow. And that's, the kind of stuff you do.
Sure.
We just everybody did their part. Everybody got involved. Everybody, you called your own plays,
Mm-hmm.
so you could do what you wanted to do, and it was for very successful.
Yeah.
So, that back to your initial question, we played back there, we won. Then we go and play UCLA.
And they had who's their quarterback?
Gary Beavers. He won the Heisman that year.
Yeah, exactly.
And they had Mel Farr.
Yeah.
They had a whole bunch of guys,
Yeah.
And we go down there and we play, and we win that game. And then we're all in the locker room in LA at the Coliseum, which ended up being my locker room for 5 years. So it was kind of a kick. And we're in the locker room, and after, we win the game, or we tie the game 16-16, and we got absolutely hosed on that. We scored 3 straight times from the 1 yard line. And once Enyart was that far in, and they absolutely did not give us any of them. So we ended up at 4 downs and didn't score.
Right.
So we come out of that, and we get all this recognition, because now it's down to us.
Yeah.
We played 2 number 2s in a row. And then Dee's having his press conference at the end of the locker room. Everybody else is getting dressed. And he's getting more vocal and talking his trash.
Yeah.
And pretty soon, he just stands up and he says, "I'm tired of playing these number 2s. I want a number 1. Everybody just goes, "Oh my God, what have you done now, Coach?" And that's,
Yeah.
that was how it was. So we went down, the next week he and Governor Reagan, our Governor McCall and Reagan had a big bet. They were betting on, salmon versus something,
Right.
all those kind of things. And it was, they were both in the stands.
Yeah. They were both at Parker.
Yeah, President
Parker
Reagan was
Stadium
there,
then.
and McCall was there. And it was one of a kind. We had so much mud on the field that they had to put a towel down on the field to put the football on between plays.
Wow.
And it would sink, and it was just horrible. And all we could do was hand off. Literally, it was 5-6 inches in some areas of just mud. And OJ versus Buff, they ran OJ the whole time. Soggy and I were at the top of the league in total offense, which wasn't much then, 110 yards or something. And we were there, and in that game, I think he had I beat him. I think I had -6 yards, and he had -8.
Wow.
But Enyart had, I think, 88 yards and OJ over 100 in that game. They ran the heck out of it. They were both mudders, and they just, it was a fun game. It wasn't a fun game if you were a quarterback, but it was fun because it was the best versus the best, and we won. So.
Right. 3-0. And isn't that too the game where kind of another famous play in that game where Jess Lewis, a defensive lineman, O.J. Simpson breaks away on a run, and Jess runs him down and tackles him.
Jesse comes off the ground, and then he takes off, but he isn't running at first. He's just like a big wildebeest or something. He's got his arms going. He's running on all fours for about the first 6 steps.
Yeah.
And, when we saw it on the film, you just couldn't believe it. Because if he wouldn't have done that, he wouldn't have gotten up in time to do it. He just saw OJ break, and he started running on all fours.
Yeah.
And he caught him and saved the touchdown, and that was it.
Yeah. Great play, obviously.
Yeah, it was fun stuff.
So 3-0, 1 field goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Haggard. High top shoes and all.
Yeah. Straight away kicker?
Yeah, away kicker.
Yeah. How long was the field goal? I don't recall.
Oh, it wasn't long. It was 25 yards or something like that.
But in the mud.
In the mud. Yep. And that's what you had to, wow, it was just something else. I remember the day, and after the game, I remember the people were just insane, and it was so much fun.
Yeah. There's a great photo of Dee being carried off the field.
Yeah.
That's one of the I think most iconic OSU football photos.
Oh, yeah.
Is that.
I remember he said after that game to everybody, he said, "I want everybody to know, if you guys ever drop me, you lose your scholarship."
That's great. More with Steve Preece, Beyond the Field, after this. Searching for a job, a mentor, or a candidate to fill your open vacancy? Find what you're looking for with alumni from Oregon State University. OSU Connections is a networking and career site exclusively for OSU alumni and students. List your Beaver-owned business in a directory. Browse or post on the job board. Connect with an OSU grad working at your dream company, or seek out advice as you change industries. Leverage your network at osuconnections.org. Because of the way things were back then, the way the bowl situation was set up, Beavers don't go to a bowl game.
No, we were a half game out of the Rose Bowl 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7-3. My year 7-3, 7-2, 1-7-3. And it was, good teams went. I mean, the SC team we beat then had 4 first rounders, I think. Ron Yeri, OJ, Earl McCulloch, great receiver, and another offense. Oh, and Adrian Young and Timmy Rozovich, who I played with in Philly for 3 years.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there weren't as many bowls back then.
No.
Yeah.
We had to go to the Rose Bowl. That was our only choice.
That was your only choice, yeah.
Yep. You couldn't even go to the Liberty Bowl. And after Terry, you were stuck with one bowl.
Yeah. So 68, another great year, but the same thing, no bowl.
No bowl.
Yeah.
No. That year we were preseason number 1. Played pretty well. I mean, we started out at Iowa, and it was, wow. That Iowa game, they had a quarterback named Larry Lawrence, and the running back was Ed Podolak, and they had some guys, and in our whole conference then, Plunkett was in the conference, and just some great football players. But we started out back at Iowa, and I got my shoulder broken in the third quarter. It was dislocated. It was a posterior dislocation. And a guy came off the bench. First time I ran the ball in the third quarter, I ran an option, went out of bounds, rolled over, and he came off the bench and stuck me and drove my shoulder completely over the back. So they operated on it that night. I missed one game. I played the rest. I played the rest of the year with my arm strapped down. So I had a strap that then it was around my waist or my chest, and then it had a strap sticking out that wouldn't allow it to go up any higher than this. So you try throwing with one arm, but that's what we did all year. Yeah. And we lost. We won that game, the first game, and we had some ups and downs that year, but we still came out 7-3. Right. Played really well.
You had another big game with SC.
We lost down there 17-13.
Yeah.
And that was a game that if we'd won that game, we'd been in the bowl.
Yeah. And that game was on national television.
Yeah.
I remember that, watching that game. Yeah.
That was good stuff. I mean, we had some great times, and we had some college games that turned out to be lifelong friendships. I mean, people won't love the fact that I'm going to say OJ became a pretty good friend of mine. I mean, I played against him.
Right.
He was always, I remember he called me Steven, and he would Beeman when he was playing for the Redskins, he was a wide receiver. And I remember Lombardi made him a wide receiver, and I was a rookie, and I went out there to bump and run, and he looked up at me and said, "What are a couple all-stars doing out here?" And you met guys on other teams, and there was, the trash talking that was done wasn't directed individually. Yeah. It might have been about your team, but it wasn't ever person on person, and the way it is today.
Yeah. Getting a chance to obviously play college football and then cover it as a broadcaster over the years, and watching athletes today, how has it changed from the way you trained back in college compared to how athletes are training today?
Well, it's year-round today.
Yeah.
They start training, I hate to say it this way, but parents get involved deeply because of the money involved. And they train their kids now. If you talk to some of the people at Oregon State, you'd find out they're getting film from 7th and 8th grade parents to show their kids. And they believe that's what, and those are the times when in my era it was, hey, play 4 sports and find out what you're good at. And now it's no, you're going to become a wide receiver and you're going to do this. So it's changed that way. Specialized and they train them specialty wise. And I don't understand how you can do that because you don't even understand what their body's going to end up like. They train so much with weight training. It's so different now than so few schools even had weight rooms when I was in high school.
No kidding. Wow.
Yep.
So just the weight training element just wasn't as big of a factor.
Oh, not at all. Yeah. At Oregon State, it was an old handball room down in the basement at Gill. That was, it had like, some weights for bench press and some squats and a couple of dumbbells, and that was it.
Yeah. That's really something, how it's grown over the years. Your experience at Oregon State when you were playing, were you involved with other activities or was it just strictly football or did you do some campus things as well?
My first year I was in some other sports, like I said, basketball and track. I was in a fraternity, love, the things we do. And I didn't live in except one term, but we had Billy Main and Enyart and a bunch of guys in our house. Yep. And it seems like different houses were known for different things. And, the Fight Elts had Terry Baker's house, but they had Didion was there and Sandstrom and a bunch of guys and Jesse Lewis and his group, Craig Hanneman. Yep. They were SAEs, and that was the social kind of stuff you did. No, not much outside of that.
Right.
Our lives were, we were there for education, and you had to get your education in 4 or 5 years. Nobody played a 5th year unless you got redshirted. And then if you got redshirted, it was kind of because you weren't good enough to play.
Yeah.
And that wasn't true. A lot of times it was you had a guy in front of you that was really good, and the coaches, decided they were going to do something. But rarely, even then, was it for anything but an injury.
Yeah.
Billy Main missed a year, redshirted a year because of that. But I can hardly think of a 5th-year guy other than Gunnar and Eaton, who came from basketball, who was there 5 years. And when you were recruited, the coaches would say, we will get you a college degree. You'll be out of here in 4 years unless there's an injury, and we'll make sure you get there. Right. And they would set up, the training tables and everything would be set. So you had your study groups after that. You had study groups in all the fraternities. If you didn't get a certain grade average, you had to take them. And it was very controlled that way, very different than today. You had to go to all your classes. They checked on classes. God, the worst of all of the coaches was Rich Brooks. He'd been a player at Oregon State and a Fight Elk at Oregon State. He knew all the tricks of the trade, and he loved going to lectures, whether it was in, I was a science zoology major, and he would show up in lectures, and he would be standing there with a list of the guys who were supposed to be in that class. Ooh. And boy, you better be there, or they'd run you to death. Yeah. That was the deal with them is if you did something wrong in school or anything else, you were stuck.
Yeah.
Another funny little thing is when I was recruited, one of the big things my parents said, well, Dee told my parents, we'll get him out of here in 4 years. That's, our promise to you is he'll study, and unless he's injured or something, he'll be out of here. And my mother said, my biggest concern is him getting up for church on Sundays and going to other Sunday things.
Right.
And Coach Connect woke me up and took me to priesthood meeting. The first 10 weeks I was in Corvallis through fall term. And then after that, he'd call me every Sunday and they'd make sure, it was just something else. Yeah. And that's what they made promises to do to everybody. It was in a different world.
Yeah. So you were a zoology major.
Yeah. I was in pre-det.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think my degree is general science or, it was different things, but I was a pre-dent guy. I got into the University of Oregon Dental School and also Tennessee at Memphis.
Oh, no kidding.
So,
wow. Yeah. So after football, though, college football, you get drafted.
Not drafted.
Or you signed a free agency.
Yep.
Yeah, free agency to the Saints.
Yes.
Right.
I went to the Saints. I'd been drafted in the first round in Canada because of the running quarterback thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was really good. And so I would say to people, if I'm not drafted in the first few rounds, I don't even want to be drafted because I'm going to go to Canada.
Yeah.
And they'd offered me $25,000. I went up to Winnipeg where they drafted me, and they'd offered me $25,000 for my first year in bonus and everything. And about, I think like 15 of it was bonus. And, so I figured I'm going to be drafted. I wasn't drafted.
Right.
I got called a couple of times in the draft. The biggest one was Dallas. And they said, we're going to draft you or Richmond Flowers.
Oh, yeah.
In the third or fourth round. But we need to know you'll play defensive back. And like I said, first of this, I was very thinking a lot of myself, and I figured, no, I've already been drafted in Canada. I'm going to be drafted I want to play quarterback. Yeah. And I said, no, I'm not. I don't want to play anything but quarterback. And I went another 17. I think we had 17 rounds or 15, and I was never drafted.
Yeah.
So, and then within 24 hours, I had 9 offers, and every single one of them was the same offer: $14,000 salary and a $2,000 bonus.
There you go.
And a couple of them were actually not every single one. So a couple of them were $1,500 bonus. Mm-hmm. And the New Orleans Saints offered me $2,000 if I made the all-rookie team and $2,000 for starting.
Yeah.
And so I took that, and then they gave me a 3-year contract. So without those first 3 bonuses you get as a rookie, I made less money my second and third year than I did my first.
Right. That's right. So did that seem like a lot of money to you back then?
Oh, my God.
Does that?
Yeah. I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah.
$14,000 I went 14, 16, and 17.5 my first 3 years, and got to keep the bonuses for starting. So I made some extra money, and, the all rookie team and those kind of things. But,
right. Did you have an agent back then?
Oh God, no. I had an agent my last couple of 3 years.
Okay.
When I got to LA, all of a sudden everybody had agents.
Yeah.
And my agent was Harold Guyver was his name. And he was also Tommy Prothrow's agent.
Oh,
and Tommy was then with the Chargers.
Yeah.
And Harold negotiated my last probably 3 contracts, which would have been my last 7 or 8. No, it would have been my last probably 6 years. Mm-hmm. So from the time I got to LA and then on up to Seattle.
Right. So you played for the Saints for how many years?
I was a year in New Orleans, then we had a strike.
Okay.
And the strike, we were out for 6 weeks. So when I got back, I got traded after the first. I'd been on the all-rookie team, and I thought I was really safe. I was starting from the 6th game my rookie year. I started my first game against John Unitas and John Mackey.
Wow.
And I was at strong safety.
Yep.
And I had such I really thought I was doing well. And I like I said, I was all rookie team, so I was playing well and was really excited about that. We went on strike. 6 weeks later, we came back in, and I got traded. I played one exhibition game in Houston, started. The next morning, I was traded to Philly. And I got to Philly and played strong safety there for 2.5 years.
Yep.
And had some great friends there. Like I said, Rozovich and Adrian Young were there. Tom Dempsey and I had been, we were best man in each other's weddings after our rookie year. Demps was in New Orleans with me. He was in Philly. He got traded to Philly a year later, so I didn't get to hold for his 63-yarder, but I held my rookie year part of it for him there. He taught me how to hold.
Right.
Held for him in Philly. Then he came to L.A. and I held it for him for 2 years in L.A. And then he came to Seattle and I held for him there. Yeah. So, but I was 2.5 years in Philly and had a little disagreement with my defensive coordinator on a plane on the way home from a Dallas game about my force. And they pushed it a little bit too much. And the next day I was headed for Denver. And I started every game there and, pretty much started most of my career. That was for John Ralston. And I really enjoyed it. Floyd Little was on the team, Lyle Alzado. We had some really good players. Charlie Johnson was the quarterback. And
was it hard to transition from quarterback to a defensive back?
No, actually quarterback helped me, because you knew a little bit more about the passing game, those kind of things. So Strong safety. When I moved there, like I said, I made the team as a corner, and then they moved me inside, and so they put me in steroids, which you could do then, and I gained from 189, 88, where I'd been all my high school and college and career, and I went up to 216 in 6 weeks. They had me on marshmallow topping and chocolate and steroids, Dianabol. And I gained a bunch of weight, and so I became that was hard because I had never played it at that size. Right. It was a different kind of feeling, but I enjoyed it, and then stayed that way until I got to Denver, and then lost the weight because they moved me to free, which is what I really wanted to play. I'd had 2 knee operations by then, which, you have an operation in the NFL and you kind of go on, you lose a step, and you lose a perspective from them as to what you can do, right? Whether you can do it or not. And I'm not sure. I didn't lose a step every time I had surgery.
Yeah, so. Right. Yeah. So moving to defensive back from quarterback, did you kind of know the handwriting was on the wall for you because you didn't get drafted as a quarterback? So did you kind of feel like that's probably the direction it's heading?
Well, when I went to the 10-day rookie camp, 2 days at every position. At the end of that rookie camp, they told you whether you were going to be invited back for fall camp. And like I said, one of my really close friends at Oregon State was also a free agent, was in the Saints camp. We were rookies in that 10-day camp. And they called me in and said, we're going to bring you back, but you're coming back as a cornerback. Yeah. That's what you're going to play. You may end up moving inside to safety, but you're a cornerback to us, and you're going to either make it or break as a cornerback. You'll never catch another pass, throw another pass, run another ball, as far as we're concerned.
Exactly. So then you move on after your stops along the way, your longest tenure with the LA Rams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chuck Knox first 4 teams. I started the first 2 and 11 games at Free, and we won 4 straight Western Division championships. I lost 3 straight NFC championships in a row, and didn't get to go to the Super Bowl in 74, 5, and 6. And I played out my option in 76 because I I'd lost my starting job, and they drafted a kid, Billy Simpson, in the first round, and they moved him in after 11 games. Yeah. And so I played out my option, which was the only way you could move then. There was no free agency as you speak, so you had to give up 10% of your salary, play that year like that, and then your agent or you could negotiate a new contract. So that's how I got to Seattle. And I got up there and got to play free safety up there and enjoy. I was team captain there defensively in 77. It was kind of fun because a couple of weeks ago I had the Rams playing the Seahawks.
Oh,
at home in our house in my den. Yeah. We've got the Rams helmet, the Rams jersey right there next to the Seahawks jersey and helmet. And it's kind of fun to see that and do that.
So with the Rams, were the Vikings your nemesis? Is that who?
Vikings, number one. No, Dallas and the Vikings together. Yeah. We played, in my years there, we played the 49ers 3 times a year, once in an exhibition. So, 12 times. Yeah. We beat them all 12 times.
No kidding.
And my other stops in the league, I played them another 4 or 5 times and never beat them. And they had Brody and Spurrier and Gene Washington. They had Wallach. They had some guys, And
Skip Vanderbunt, who you mentioned.
Skipper was there the whole time, and Dave Wilcox.
Dave Wilcox as well.
Wilk might be the best football player ever out of this state,
Both linebackers.
Oh, yeah, both linebackers.
Yeah, that's right. How was the LA experience? You think of LA, Hollywood?
Oh, it wasn't. We trained at Long Beach, Blair Field. Yep. And so we all lived down on the beach cities, Sunset Beach to, Huntington. Mm-hmm. And we all practiced right in Long Beach, next to Long Beach State. And then just drove up for the games. So you'd stay the night before. We stayed at the Beverly Hilton the night before, and I had that's the closest I ever came to seeing the LA scene. Mm-hmm. They put me my first year. they roomed me with Lance Rensel.
Oh, yeah.
And Lance and I had gotten in a fist fight in a game when he was with the Cowboys and I was with the Eagles.
Yes.
And so they put us in this room together when we both got traded there within 2 weeks of each other just to make us get along.
Right.
And I can remember walking into my room at the Beverly Hilton, and I opened the door and I just about fall over. And Lance looks at me and he said, we'd been in 10 fights in practice because,
Right.
we couldn't stand each other. And he looks at me and says, well, they did this on purpose. So he said, I guess we should start getting along.
Yes.
And we became really good friends.
That's great. Yeah.
And I probably, we enjoyed that because, the Rams, like most teams, give you a Monday night is off, and you go in and you run and nothing else, and then they'd just tell you to go to Long Beach to a tavern or something, and you get to do that, and you really had some close friends that way. But the only LA scene you saw was on night before the game at the Beverly Hilton. There were just crazy stuff going on,
Right.
And Rensel he was an actor, so we had Michael Douglas visiting him and stuff like that. It was before Douglas was a star.
Sure.
And he was in a series then with Brenda Vaccaro.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
and,
the actress.
and they
sure.
came in, they came in and sat on our patio, and
Yeah.
Lance always got the ground floor, which was great.
Yeah.
Because, it's just interesting stuff.
Fred Dreyer?
Freddie Dreyer, still one of my closest friends, the Sultan. I communicate with him a lot. He's still in LA, still producing.
Yep. He
still
acted
doing
as
those
well.
things.
It was a TV show.
Yeah, he had Hunter and Land's End.
Yep.
Karen and I got to, we go down to Cabo 3 or 4 times a year, and when he was doing Land's End, we would watch him film and we'd have dinner with him. And I keep in touch with Freddie. Bob Stein was a linebacker that was then the president of the Timberwolves for years and one of the owners. And Dave Elmendorf is a receiver down there.
Right.
Or is the other safety, excuse me. Occasionally some others. I ran into Lawrence McCutcheon on the phone with a friend of yours too, Greg Kropalik.
Oh, sure.
Great center.
Yeah, absolutely.
Greg has a home in Palm Springs, and one night he calls me up a year ago, and he says, I got a new neighbor. He gets on the phone, and I recognized his voice after 40 years, just instantly, with his nickname was Clutch, and he was a great running back, and he says, hey, Preece, what are you doing? That kind of stuff. So
great.
I still keep in touch with a few of them. I used to do a lot with Demps, but he passed away about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting how you remember things. And we were talking about doing the broadcasts for Prime Sports Northwest, and we were doing a game. It was down in Los Angeles, and I can't remember if we were playing the Trojans or the Bruins, but we were at the team hotel where we would stay, and Fred Dreyer comes by and picks you up to go out to lunch somewhere. And it's just like, I thought that was pretty cool. It's like,
it was good. We had some kind of fun stuff like that because Freddie always did that. And Freddie then I'd give him a pass down on the sideline. Yeah. And it was so much fun because the kids, then he was doing the TV shows, and the kids on the sideline would be just doing this. And finally the coaches would say, you got to get Freddie to stay, because Freddie would go right onto the bench and start talking to everybody. Right. And, the guys come off on the defense, and he decides to tell the defensive ends what to do,
That's great.
But like I said, I keep in touch with him. My wife's mom's 90th birthday was this year, and Freddie's her favorite actor. So he wrote her this great card and sent her a big picture and everything. And he's special. And like I said, Bob Stein, I keep in touch with, and a few others. Elmo every once in a while. Elmo started doing Texas A&M radio in 1989, the year I started doing Oregon State TV, and he's still doing their radio.
Wow, that's great. So what ended your career? You go up to Seattle, injury?
Yeah.
Yep.
I had a 2-year contract up there, and I actually blew out my knee the last exhibition game, and didn't miss a game. Yeah. In fact, didn't miss a play until probably the last 20 plays of the season. And I hit my head and ruined it. And I had the knocked me cold. So I was out. And then I had surgery the next Monday or Tuesday. They took bone out of my knee, cut about 1/4 inch off each side of the bone. and I could not pass the physical
Right.
In the fall. So that's what ended my career. And, it was probably time by then.
Yeah.
That was my 4th surgery in the NFL on my knees.
Yeah.
So every time, I had one after the first and I got traded, during the strike before the second, but it was as much because of my speed. You just lose a step. It takes a year to get back. And I did the same thing in Philly. I'd had surgery just for the season there, and I had it in Denver after the Denver year.
Did your experiences at Oregon State prepare you for what your eventual career was at the NFL?
Yeah, they did, because it was hard-nosed, tough football. I made it in football and in league and in life because I learned, because of coaches and because of my teammates, to be tough. And it was cool for me, David, because as a quarterback, I was told when I was moved to quarterback in high school, I was told, you're supposed to be the leader if you're the quarterback. You should finish first in every run. You should finish first in every one of these things. And I swear, it stuck with me all the way through. When we were rookies at a rookie camp in New Orleans, the 10-day rookie camp, that we had to run a mile at the end of it. And we'd had to run the Andros mile the first day of camp every year.
Wow.
And, I ran a 4:57 or something like that at the Saints camp. And I'm not sure it didn't bring me back.
Right.
Because like I said, they told a teammate that he couldn't come back, and they brought me back. And I'm not sure I was good enough at any one of those 5 positions to come back. And I think that it had a lot to do with it. Well, that's what, that's the preparation. It just prepared you for life and prepared you for being a teammate and prepared you for be a tough guy.
Yeah, right. How different was college ball from the NFL?
A ton.
Yeah.
And the biggest reason was that you were fighting for a job, and you weren't that way in college. But it was still, boy, you had once the cuts were made, then you were all teammates, and it was just like college.
Yeah.
I had great friends in New Orleans. In New Orleans, my rookie year, we had Danny Abramowitz, and our quarterback was Billy Kilmer, and guys like that. Just fun to play with, and they, there were only 4 rookies on the team. Ed Hargett was one, Richard Neal, another, John Shinners, and me. Yeah. And so, and then Demps came in halfway through the season as a rookie too. But we'd have to take the veterans down to the French Quarter, and we'd have to pick them up, and we'd have to take them home and lie to their wives as to what they've been drinking since practice, stuff like that. And New Orleans was a fun place, and it was a great. I'd never seen anything like, like I said, Mormon family, and I go to New Orleans, Sin City. Yeah. Philly was such a different world too. I had more fun in these cities because I'd never been anywhere like that.
Right. It's all new experiences for you.
All new. In Philadelphia, just seeing the history and working with the history, you just kind of go, wow, what have I missed? What's going on back here? Denver was so different. We lived in Westminster, just a different thing. I have some specific memories of each place, that were so kind of, I would remember them so much. I was my dad was probably the closest person to me all my life. And like I said, he was a farmer. And I was in Philly, morning practice, and our coach was, my coach in the secondary was Irv Cross, that used to be on TV. Yeah. Irv was the coach. And we were having they're just six defensive backs, sometimes a 7th, but in those days you only had 40 guys on the team, and 6 were defensive backs. And all of a sudden, a locker room kid comes out at morning practice, 2-a-days, and he says out loud to Coach Cross, and everybody could hear it. He says, "Somebody in Preece's family's dead. He needs to go see the general manager." And so I walk in and find out my dad had died then, and my closest friend, and all that stuff. And so I remember Philly as much for that as that in the history as anything else. Yeah. We lived in New Jersey. It was fun, and the fans in Philly just loved the Eagles.
Yeah.
Oh God, they just loved us. We were at Old Franklin Field, you know, and that was a kick. And we're University of Pennsylvania. You know, we were down on Sansom Street and all the things you remember from the poems and everything.
Sure. Yeah.
And just different things were great.
Any NFL game that really stands out to you that it's just like, boy, I'll never forget. Maybe there's several, but I'll never forget that one.
Well, there are several. The one that probably stands out to me the most is you'd call it a mistake I made, and it cost us dearly, cost us a playoff. Yeah. And it was we fell behind Dallas in '73. We were. God, I think we were 10-2. We fell behind Dallas. We'd beaten them badly a couple weeks before. And they had a couple of quick plays early on that they were up by 14 or something like that. And we had been waiting on Staubach to bait him into something the whole game. And we came back from like 17 to nothing to 17-14. And we were in a situation there at Free where I was supposed to sucker him into throwing a certain pattern by my lineup. And it all worked perfect, right to the point that he threw the pass and I went up for it, caught the ball, collided with the cornerback, Eddie McMillan. Ball pops up in the air and Drew Pearson goes 73 yards for the touchdown.
Yeah.
And they end up beating us by that margin.
Yeah.
And it was just changed, you know, it just changed things for me. You know, I was an alternate for the Pro Bowl that year. And you know, I still started the next year and a half, but it just kind of changed things. All of a sudden that was a big play you could have made. And it was two of us colliding. Sure. And it just, so I remember that one more, but I remember so many others. I mean, I scored a couple, 3 touchdowns on different things, you know, either fumbles or interceptions or, you know, fake field goals, stuff like that. I have, our 73 team, that team that I just told you about, still holds the all-time record for fewest points in a season. It's a 14-game season, but 10 points a game.
Wow.
You know, I was a pretty good defensive back when I got to L.A., but when I got there, it was Jack Youngblood, Hall of Fame, Merlin Olsen, Hall of Fame, Larry Brooks, who should have been, Freddie Dreyer. That was our line. You know, you could be a pretty good defensive back. I remember Ray Malavasi, who then became a Super Bowl head coach. He was our defensive coordinator. And about the second day, I'm out, we're doing defensive drills. And he says something to me like, he says, you know, you've been on teams in New Orleans and Philly and Denver where you have to cover people for a whole long time. And he says that, you know, so you can't do some of the things we want you to do. And he said, here's what we're going to do. And remember, this is Chuck's first year. So we were just kind of starting out in this. And he says, I want you to go 1,001, 1,002. And then you break right then. Wherever that guy's going, you go. Because that's where the ball's going to be out. And if it isn't, we'll get rid of the defensive lineman. And, you know, all of a sudden you're making plays on balls you've been backpedaling on before because you were afraid you were going to get deep by making a play on it.
Now you got a D line that's pressuring the quarterback who has to get rid of it.
And we had Hacksaw Reynolds and Isaiah Robertson and Jimmy Youngblood, and you know, it was a really good football team. Made me appreciate defense so much that, you know, you see what happened last weekend with the Seahawks and go, wow, that's good football.
Exactly. How did you transition into the broadcast booth?
I wasn't even thinking about it. I was at a deal out at Jansen Beach, a Oregon Sports Hall of Fame, I think, banquet. And Oregon State had just gotten that contract. And they announced it that night for Oregon and Oregon State. We're both going to have programs on Fox or Prime Sports Northwest.
Yeah, right.
And they announced it, and Hal Cowan got up to, you know, take the pats on the back and say he was so excited about it and everything. And they asked him right there on stage, who was going to be are you going to use PR people? And he says, we're going to use somebody from Oregon State. We aren't going to bring in network people. They're going to be Oregon Staters. And that was, I think, something Hal Cowan did, David. Yeah. And
who was the SID for Oregon State,
and
Sports
they
Information
said,
Director.
who? And he says, well, it's going to be somebody who knows football, knows pro football, has been there at the highest level. And Preece is here. How about you want to do it, Steve? And he actually said it to me right there. And I just kind of looked and I thought he's kidding,
Right.
And afterwards he came up to me and says, I was serious about that. You want to do the games?
Wow.
And I said, tell me about it. And that's the first thing I ever heard about it.
Yeah. And here you are still today doing on the radio network. Yeah.
89.
Yeah. Obviously you've enjoyed it because you've done it for this long.
And I've done it with some really good people.
Yeah.
Jimmy Jones was the best, but I've never seen a better announcer than Parker. He might be a duck, but he's,
yes,
that's his education only. But he knows so much football and knows so many things. And the other people from Scotty Lynn and Jimmy, and they've all been good. And it's given me an opportunity to work with some great guys in the booth. I've done games with Dick Vermeil, who was our special teams coach and running back coach in LA. And people like that. Bobby Grimm every week for so many years was a ball. You get to enjoy the games with those people, and it's been a lot of fun. But most of all, just kept me close to football. Something I enjoy, and drove my wife crazy for many years.
That's it. But then also too, commercial real estate.
Started doing that. Like I said, I was admitted to a couple of dent schools. But I knew halfway through college, I really didn't think I wanted to be a dentist. But I wanted to make some money because we didn't have any money.
Right.
And so I was in that and got admitted to those schools. And after my first year of pro ball, I just decided I was going to come out and come back to Oregon, where I was admitted to dental school and had 3 years to go and interview. And Oregon State, Dee, arranged me to have interviews. And one of them was with Norris, Beggs, and Simpson here in Portland. And I started to work there for a big Beavs, Steve Gilly. I think he's still alive and lives in Hawaii. And I worked there for 2 years or 3 years till I was with Denver. And then I moved over to the Gilly company, his company, and we then sold to Cushman Wakefield. I went out on my own.
Yeah. And your
Been
business
there ever
to this
since.
day.
Yeah. Yep. Still doing it today. I did it with another Beav, Bill Floberg, for 30 years, actually.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed a great time as Preece and Floberg. I still call my brokerage business that. We developed two, and I don't do that anymore. I'm just a broker for national tenants.
I think a lot of people don't know this, that back in the day of the NFL, players had to have other jobs.
Oh, yeah.
It just wasn't football. They worked in the off season.
Well, as soon as my first off season in New Orleans, I sold life insurance for College Master. At the Tulane campus where our stadium was. And then I got married, and that's when I moved back out here after the first season with Philly. You had to have a job. It started within a couple of weeks of whatever. And I mean, I think my Norris, Beggs, and Simpson thing was, I got $500 a month when I started, but that was against commissions. So if you had to make the commissions to get the
You're not getting anything. That's it. Do you get it? Speaking of college and being at Tulane, but now Oregon State as well, do you get a chance to talk or mentor student athletes at all?
I haven't, David. I've seen that before, but my business has really kept me pretty busy, and also all our families pretty much around. The one who's moved away in the last couple of years is the only one who doesn't, and he comes back here a lot, and we go visit him. But I got plenty to do right now, and probably stay that way. Whatever mentoring I'm trying to do is with my own kids and my grandkids.
There you go. When you look at your career and everything that you've done over the years, from your college days, NFL, business, anything you do differently now?
Probably what I'm a lot more concerned with people's feelings than I was then. And that's a result of having the greatest woman in the world that I've lived with for the last zillion years.
Right.
But I've gotten so I care a lot more about other people's thoughts as opposed to my own in business and everything. And I think that's probably the biggest difference in my life.
Yeah.
When you're playing in a professional sport, you got to be a little bit selfish and cocky and all those things. And I think that as you get older and get more successful or set financially or whatever, you can become a lot nicer guy.
There you go. Well, and you think of the student athlete today as well, and you have the whole NIL deal going on now. And I mean, how do you see that compared to when you were a college student? Totally different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of that. First of all, I don't think it can continue to exist. They have less control of college right now than the NFL does. Mm-hmm. You have a salary cap in the NFL that doesn't allow a lot of college players to make the same thing in the NFL that they're making in college.
Right.
And it to me makes it so different. You know, today they take a lot of their classes, most of their classes online, don't even spend time on campus. Yeah. And like I said earlier, we used to have coaches checking us to make sure we were in class every day. And they don't have to do that anymore. It's the training, which you mentioned earlier. It's year round now. Yeah. We used to, a lot of guys would at least take off a month or something, or go or run track or play basketball or play intramural basketball or something, but you wouldn't necessarily just keep going. Now it's a year-round job. Yeah. It's year-round food. It's year-round everything. And the money thing is so different. And I don't blame the kids for getting all you can. Sure. But all we wanted was a college education and a summer job. Yeah. And I worked every vacation I seemed like I had for most of college was at Oregon State working on the grounds crew. We had four of us, John Diddy and John Sandstrom, Jerry Belcher, and I worked on the far side of the stadium when it was done in 67. Yeah. We were hod carriers for Charlie Parker Construction.
How about
back
that?
Then. And that's the kind of thing I worked for Green Oak Construction one summer. Yeah. Oregon State got me that job. Yeah. My first summer was for a guy in Boise from Gem Furniture, Alex Finley, that was a Beaver. And so much of my life, you could say, how did that happen? Whether it was that job or any of the jobs in college, or the Oregon State helping me get interviews up here, or anything. Yeah. It's
it was your connection to Oregon State.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's funny. It's when I went away to college, my dad said, "Don't let your studies interfere with your education." And I think he was right, but it was the education, the whole education, what happened on and off the field, and with all the people from D down and up, that makes the difference.
In that same vein, then, what is your message to today's student athlete?
Well, I think that a few years ago, Jonathan Smith and I were talking at practice, and he asked me to, he says, anything you got an idea that it'd help us with? And I said, have you ever brought people in to speak? And he says, well, we've done a few. And I said, have you ever had Terry Baker?
Right.
And he said, no, Terry, and Terry loves Oregon State, but he hadn't been close to it. And he's a friend of mine. Yeah. So I said, can I get him to come down to practice? And,
Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah. And he's right there in the locker room every day.
Exactly.
They've got that stuff there. And Jonathan said, could you? And I brought him down to practice. And it was so funny. He'd never been to an Oregon State practice in all those years. Yeah. And he's an attorney here, and he's still working a little bit, but he's just the greatest guy. He's still playing golf, still hitting from the wimpy tees now, but he's just a great guy. Yeah. And they brought individual groups over during practice. The quarterbacks had come over and they'd talk to Terry. And then the linemen had come over and they'd talk to Terry and all that. And then at the end, everybody got together, and he spoke to him for about 5 minutes. And I remember him starting out, and they're out on the field, out at Parker, or outside Up Valley, and he in the middle of 100 guys, he turns around and he points at this university and he said, that's what you're here for. That's what you want to get out of this.
Yeah.
All this is excess. This is all great, but it's all excess. What you want to come out of college with is what you get out of those buildings. And that's all I have to say to you.
Yeah.
It was the shortest speech I'd ever heard.
But quite
But
meaningful.
one of the most meaningful speeches I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And he got a standing ovation, and, you know, he was nearly in tears just because they were nice to him.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he you know, just one of the special people that ever was associated with Oregon State. And to see him with that kind of emotion, just, you know,
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember some of the other guys that I've watched respond because of their love to Oregon State. You know, Coach Andros,
Sure.
100th birthday party that he was gone many years before. We had Paul Brothers back,
Yeah.
Thurman Bell, and people like that you just go, wow, this is too cool.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt was back for
Yeah.
that. It's just good stuff.
Great story. Well, what a story, Steve Preece, your life, and getting the chance to relive it. We really appreciate you sharing that with us. Anything we missed?
Oh, God, you know, it just, you go where your heart tells you to go. And I remember that in choosing where I was going to school. My parents advised me to do is, you know, of course, theirs was go say a prayer and go where you're going.
Yeah.
And, but go where your heart says and do what you have to do if you're an athlete. And for the athletes, I'd say there's more to this than how much money you make. And appreciate the guys you're there with, appreciate the esprit de corps, and, you know, again, don't let the studies interfere with your education.
Right. And you know what I learned about you that I didn't know is that for a certain way in your life, you could have been filling a cavity in my tooth. I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Steve, thank you so much. Thanks for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Always great to catch up with you.
Oh, thank you, David. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Field, brought to you by the Oregon Stater Magazine, the flagship publication of the Oregon State University Alumni Association and Oregon Community Credit Union. For more than a century, the Oregon Stater has shared stories of Beavers making an impact in their communities and around the world, strengthening lifelong connections to Oregon State. You can find upcoming episodes of Beyond the Field at OregonStater.org, where you'll also find more great Beaver stories and information about joining the OSU Alumni Association. And don't forget to show your Beaver pride with OCCU's Beaver Visa. No annual fee, a 0% introductory offer, and bonus points on Beaver purchases. Until next time, I'm David Endres. Thanks for listening, and strike up the OSU Marching Band. Go Beavs!